This is an interview with Reverend Carter Gaston for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Oral History Project. I'm Dr. Horace Huntley. We're at Miles College. Today is June 24, 1996. Thank you, Reverend Gaston, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and talk with us today about the movement.
Yes.
Just want to start by asking some general questions about your background. Where were your parents from? Were they born and raised here in Birmingham?
No.
What part of, were they from Alabama?
They from Alabama.
What part of Alabama?
My mother was from Bullitt County, which is Midway, Alabama. Stop before you get to
sometimes we can't remember those names, but
yes.
That's all. But it was Bullitt County.
Bullitt County.
Right. Your father from Bullitt County?
No, my father was from a place called Gastonburg, next to Catherine, and
Gastonburg.
Gastonburg. That's on the Mobile line. That's going toward Mobile, just out of Selma.
Okay. Well, where does Gastonburg? The name Gastonburg. Your name is Gaston now.
Yes.
Was that your named after your folk?
To my understanding. To my understanding.
Now,
on the community.
Did they were born in those places? Did they come to Birmingham at an early age?
They came to Birmingham at an early age.
And you were born here in Birmingham?
I was born here in Birmingham.
What kind of education did your mother and your father have?
A little of elementary education.
And what kind of work did your father do?
He worked at old TCNI, which is USX now.
Okay.
Started out in the mine.
In the iron ore mines?
Coal mine. He started out in the coal mine. And my mother didn't want him to work in the mine because of the danger of it. And so he came out of the mine and went in the machine shop with that same company.
Oh, I see. And did your mother work outside of the home?
Yes, she did. She worked for the Calders furniture company.
Yes.
But she worked at their home.
And do you ever remember going to that home with her?
Yes.
You do?
I sure do.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember going with her.
You have brothers and sisters?
I have one sister.
One sister.
One sister, but we were not raised in the same home together. That's my sister on my father's side. I'm older than she is.
So you were raised as an only child?
As an only child.
Did they spoil you?
No, I don't think they did.
What community were you raised up in?
In Smithfield.
Smithfield?
Raised in Smithfield.
That's one of the older communities in the city.
One of the oldest in the city.
What was it like growing up in Smithfield?
To me, it was a wonderful experience. Growing up in Smithfield, it was a closeness of family, friends. We were very close, and naturally, all of us attended most of the same school, except for Greymouth. Some went to Greymouth, but most of us went to Lincoln, and from Lincoln, the old annex building, and from there up to what we call the main building, Parker.
The Parker High School.
That's correct.
Yep. So you started school then at Lincoln Elementary School?
It's the Lincoln Elementary School.
What do you remember about your days at Lincoln?
Are
there any teachers?
Yes, Mrs. Wimberly. She was one of my favorite teachers, Mrs. Shelton and Mrs. Martin.
Why do you remember them? Why do they stick out in your mind?
Well, they taught us back at that time to prepare ourselves as being men who would take on responsibility. And they were very patient with us. Mrs. Martin was the mathematics teacher, and she instilled in us that the fundamental of basing out anything come through numbers, and taught us it's basically to learn how to count, just those basic things that'll carry you through life.
Right. So your time at Lincoln then was obviously those foundation years
Yes.
that would spill over into the junior high and high school years.
Yes.
Now I remember my going to Winona High and to Winona Elementary, and the high school was just up the hill from the elementary school. So we
Yes.
always had this idea that it was great to be able to eventually go to Winona High School.
That's correct.
Did you have the same kind of experience?
Yes, I
going
did.
to Lincoln and then to the annex?
And then to the annex. Look forward to going there because it was the next step
The next
from
step.
Lincoln School down the annex, and then from there up to the main building. And it seems like it was a challenge, to go from one to the other.
Right. Yeah. You'd accomplished something once
That's
you
correct.
made that. Yeah, I remember
Yes.
people walking through the schoolyard, the elementary schoolyard,
Yes.
going on to the high school, and
That's
that's
correct.
what we envied.
That's right.
We wanted to be able to walk up that hill ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
Now, Parker High School, of course, is world-renowned.
Yes.
What do you remember about your days at Parker?
One of the instructors there, 2 or 3, but 2 of them, Mrs. Brooks and Abercrombie, Dr. Abercrombie, they did something for me. I learned from Mrs. Shelton that if you could read well, then you could understand, and that was a great help. Mrs. Wimley taught history, and I love history. She was our history, and she was very good, very good. To me, she always made sense out of what she said. When I got to Annex, a very dear friend of mine who had some influence on me, and almost turned me in another direction, and I was not attending class as I should have.
Almost turned you away from
Yes.
from learning.
Yes. But when I went to class, I could read and this kind of thing, and then the influence of my mother and father doing that at home. So he said to me, he and my father were very good friends, but he said to me, he said, now, I'm not going to let you go to the next grade until you make up this grade because you're wasting time. You can read too well, and I know your background. That helped me. Mrs. Brooks did the same thing in mathematics, and that helped me. I thank them for that today.
This was Brooks and Abercrombie?
That's correct.
And you feel that this, in fact, helped you to be stronger once you moved on?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. I never liked failing,
Right.
and I wasn't brought up like that in failing. So I felt that I was a letdown to my parents, not only to my parents, but to Dr. Abercrombie and Mrs. Brooks. Yeah.
Was this at Lincoln or at the Annex or at Parker?
At Annex.
This is at the Annex.
And
So this is what, 8th or 9th grade?
Yes, 9th grade. Mrs. Wimberly at Lincoln and Mrs. Martin and Shelton, they had set the background. And that made me feel that if I was letting all those people down. And
So you then...
so they helped me to catch myself.
Yeah. So as the kids would say today, you got your act together.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then you went on to Parker High School.
that's correct.
What was significant about Parker?
Well, she was the capital school of the South, we felt.
Well, I won't get into a discussion with you about that since I'm from Winona. But,
Yeah, and it was just great to be a part of that historical site there, and I was able to be around great principals like Principal Johnson, Dr. R.C. Johnson, principal of that school, and she provided so many people who may have made history from that school. And so you had a lot to look up to, a lot of people to idolize and want to be like. If you were in basketball, if you were in football, you had a lot of people to look up to because a lot of people made it. Some of them Went to Grambling, you know, and they did well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Were you involved in extracurricular activities?
Yes, I was. One of my favorites was basketball, and I thought I was pretty good
Okay.
in basketball. Like football too, but basketball, I really like it real well.
Did you play football?
I played a little bit. I played a little bit.
So you were one of the athletes then.
Yes.
And because I can remember that Parker, many times when I was coming through, they played in what was termed the national championships at Tennessee State.
Sure.
And did you have the opportunity to play any of those games?
Just once. Just once.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that would always be a memorable occasion for
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity. Well, Parker at that time, you know, they provided means by where you could go to the tobacco farm and work on the tobacco farm and make a little money.
In Connecticut?
In Connecticut, make a little money and buy your school material and what have you. So through that, I was able to go through Morehouse. You registered at the school, but you went through Morehouse College, and I got a chance to meet some great people. And that was motivating for me to continue learning. I met some great people.
Who were
by
some of
doing
the people that you met?
I met a young man by the name of Slocum, and he made the Harlem Globetrotter. I mean, the Harlem Magicians. And all of us were playing basketball one day up on the hill, we call it, at the tobacco farm over at Hazelville, and he beat us by himself.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was really something.
So he went on to play professional basketball?
Yes. Plus, I met young men from Knoxville, Tennessee, Mississippi, Georgia, who were striving to make it better. Even Shelley Milliner. We all went to tobacco farm together.
Now, this is from Parker?
This is from Parker.
And was this in your senior year or your junior year?
52.
Or was it
Junior year.
your junior year? And then you actually returned and came back to Parker to finish up your senior year?
Yes.
Okay. What was it like working on a tobacco farm in Connecticut? Being from Birmingham, Alabama, going all the way to the East Coast.
Yes.
Was there a transition there?
Well, it was a challenge. The year prior to 52, we went up, and those fellows who had been going a few years before, Charles Bradford, they suggested to us a challenge by working by the bench system, which is piecework. You know, you earn what you make. Okay. And so that was a challenge, and we did real well in that. Back in that time, you know,
What did
man
you
made
actually
$100, he was making money.
Yeah. What did you do? What kind of work?
Well, we picked tobacco. We plant tobacco, and we learned how to hoe it and suckle it, take the smaller leaves out, and then we learned how to pick it, pick tobacco. So it was a great experience.
So if you made $100 that summer, you in high
No, we talking about $100 a week.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I know that was big time money.
That was big time money back at that time in 52.
Right.
Another great experience that we learned in 52, we had been told that the northern cities were not like the southern cities. You know, everything was free. But when we went, we found it a little bit different. We went to the Connecticut Luncheon, which was like Britling, Morrison.
What city is this?
This is in Hartford. Connecticut.
Okay.
They fed us, but they also embarrassed us by taking our plates, throwing them in the garbage can. So the next week we got together, and we went back to the Connecticut luncheon. And
why did they throw your plates in the garbage can?
well, they're saying that they didn't want you there.
They didn't want to use that plate anymore.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right. So we went back. We got together, and we went in teams, and just let them broke up all their plates. When they discovered they had to broke up all, they had nothing to serve with, then they cut that out. They didn't do it anymore. See, but that was my first encounter of being in demonstrations.
So you found that although you were now north of the Mason-Dixie,
yeah,
the attitude in many cases was very similar.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So you then would return to Parker for your senior year. You would finish at Parker. What would you do after you finished school?
I knew nothing about seminary school, but this was my heart desire. I wanted to go to a school where I could study the Bible and this kind of theology, but I knew nothing about it. But this is what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I knew at an early age that that I was preacher, really. Mm-hmm. I learned that at an early age. Mm-hmm. And the Lord appeared and expressed himself to me when I was 16 years old. That's what I wanted to do. That was the main thing I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I also wanted to work at the plant where I am, okay? Mm-hmm. But my next thing that I wanted to, really the first thing that I wanted to do, I wanted to attend some theological seminary. And of course, later on I did do that. You
said at age 16 you knew that you wanted to be a preacher.
Yeah, I knew it prior to that, but...
How did you know?
Well, strange happenings. For an example, my father, he played some type of game out to Westfield at the commissary, and he won a pony, and
a live pony.
A live pony. His name was Mickey. He won that pony. Hay, saddle, everything, and so he got a gentleman to bring it home, and I never will forget. I went on the corner of 2nd Street and 9th Avenue, 9th Court rather, and I waited on. He told me he was going to bring him home that day, and I waited on and I looked way down across Great Mount Avenue, and I saw him bringing that the pony. And so when he got to me, well, I ran across the street and met him down by the field in Smithfield playground. And he lifted me up on the horse. I guess I was about 7 or 8 years old. And he gave me the rein. And I never will forget, he told me, he said, well, the Lord wants you to have it, and he gave me the rein. So I kept him about a year or so. Unusual, strange things like that happen in my life, make me know that. And then I had a desire, nobody had to make me go to church. That's what I wanted to do.
So this was just something sort of innate.
Yes.
You just felt that this was your calling.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. You mentioned that when you were at Parker in 11th grade, you went to the tobacco farm, but you went through Morehouse.
Morehouse.
Explain that to me.
Well, Morehouse was helping young men, and this was a way of encouraging young men also to come to Morehouse school. And they had a school of religion, which later I attended, and
well, did you actually physically go to Morehouse and then to Connecticut? Was there an orientation period of any sort?
Yes. You went to Morehouse. You carried your birth certificate, and they did an orientation on you, and you left there. You left from Atlanta, from Morehouse College in Atlanta. You left there and went to Connecticut.
How did you get there?
We went
to
there
Morehouse, and then from Morehouse to Connecticut.
Okay, we got over Morehouse by train. And we left Morehouse going to Connecticut by train.
That's right. Okay.
They had a very refined program.
How many of you you remember from Parker that would go? Is it 10?
10 or 15. 10 or 15.
And that was something that happened annually.
Annually.
Yeah. Well, this is the first time I've heard it happening from high schools. I know that Tuskegee sent kids to tobacco farms, and there are other colleges.
Sure.
But it's interesting to see that there were high schools as well that was doing it. Yeah. And then after high school, did you go to work?
Yes, I did. I went to work after high school.
And where did you work?
I went to work before. You know, you could get out of school at 1:45 or 2:45 and go and work a job in the evening.
Right.
A good friend of mine by the name of George Mitchell. George went to tobacco farm. So when we came back in '52, he found a job at Cress's Soda Lunch Department.
Downtown.
And then he spoke for me. And then he came and told me that he had spoke for me and wondered, was I interested in working? I told him yes. So I went with him and got the job. Then I went back to school the next day and got with Mr. Johnson, the principal, and he set up the schedule for me. I had all scheduled, all my main subjects in the morning, and just after lunch, I could leave and go to work and work there from 2 o'clock until it closed, and then clean up and get ready for the next morning for them. But I started working there in 1952. Okay. Sure did.
And then after high school, did you continue to work there?
No, I didn't continue to work there. I worked at Caller's Furniture Store for a little while. Okay. And then I left there and went to Western Grain, and I worked with Western Grain for 5 years. I was still trying to get on where I am now. And
where is that?
And that's at Alabama Byproducts over in Tarrant City, Drummond, subsidiary of Drummond Company now.
Right.
That's where I am.
And you eventually got on there.
Yes.
What kind of work did you do there?
It's a coke and chemical place. The coke is provided to make cars, to melt iron. But their main consumer is General Motors. They sell more coke to General Motors than any other person, any other company. They have Nielsen, but they're trying to get away from Nielsen with that smaller coke and deal with nothing but just foundry coke with General Motors and maybe Chrysler. But that's a coke and chemical. They just deal with that. It's a lot of products come out of coal, but they just deal with coke and a little chemical.
So you never served in the military?
Never served in the military. Sure did.
In the mid-'50s, a number of things were taking place. One of the things that Birmingham, I guess, is most noted for is the development of the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights in 1956.
Yes.
After the NAACP was outlawed from organizing in
That's
the state.
correct.
Were you involved in that effort at all, that early? Now, you were a young man at that time.
Yes, yes. No, my father interested me in, he was in the real early stage of the organizing.
So that's how
I think
you
I went to one meeting.
Okay.
At Sardis.
Okay.
I went to one meeting at Sardis, and this was a meeting where they actually got it started.
Okay.
They wanted Reverend Alfred as president, but Reverend Alfred did what Reverend Abernathy did with Dr. King. He said that he appreciated that them asking. But he thought that Reverend Shuttleworth would be the best general for that job, and that's the way. But my father was at the early stage of it, really.
I see. So he was active with the organization, in fact, of the Alabama Christian
Yes,
Movement.
yes.
When did you get involved? I mean, on a continuing basis.
Just after it organized, and began the Monday night meetings,
Okay.
I got involved. I really got interested.
So you attended then mass meetings.
I tell you, oh yes, oh yes.
Can you describe what a mass meeting was like?
A mass meeting was very motivating, especially about news of bad things happening to us physically. People just crowded in whatever church, no matter how large the churches, they were just crowded in to get the news about what's going on and what they could do to help make a change. And Reverend Shutterworth was good at keeping us abreast of what things were going on.
Yeah. What motivated you to continue?
I despise getting on that bus. That was degrading to me. Pay your money to the operator of the bus, and he was a deputized policeman. He wore his gun, and if he decided to let you on the front of the bus, he would do so. But if he decided not to do it and tell you to go to the back, and if he decided not to open that door, you just drive off with your money and you no ride. And after you have worked all day, whether you worked all day or not, that was your money. You paid for that was a public transportation. You paid for that ride. And to be harassed like that for no cause at all, that man didn't know any of the people, any of the black people that got on that bus, where they lived, what they were doing, anything. It was just all dependent upon what mood he was in. And I just thought that was just
You looked at that as
awful,
being the most insulting
Yes,
part of the segregationist,
yes, yes.
because it was a daily occurrence.
The daily occurrence. The other thing is that you were supposed to have been provided with protection from the city for officers. And they would put on their hoods and ride through your community and tell you not to sit on the porch, everybody get up and go in the house. In the black community, that was humiliating.
You actually saw the Klan
I actually
come through
saw
your
that.
community?
That's correct. Rode down Ninth Court in Smithfield. They would parade and advertise themselves as a hate group. Advertise it. And the city fathers put up with that. That was degrading. And anything that I could do to help turn that around, I was going to do it. Yeah.
Can you remember the first time that you saw the Klan? Or the time that it had the greatest impact upon you, just viewing them coming through your community?
47, 48.
You were a child?
Yes. I was still at Lincoln, but getting ready to go to Parker in 1950, and they would ride through the community, parade through the community. Police would lead the parade back in 47, 48, 49.
What would the adults, black adults in the community, do or say?
Well, it was always, our parents always encouraged us to become registered voters, even though it was difficult doing it, but to motivate it and to tell us that it's going to be a better day. They believe that. They believe that if they weren't there to see the better day, they believed that it was going to be a better day, that was not going to continue. That's why you had so many people get involved in the movement. It's because when persons came along, like Shuttlesworth, like Dr. Martin Luther King and Abernathy and Wyatt Walker and all of them, when they came along and really started something, everybody was ready to make that change. That's why you had so much involvement in it. Yeah.
Did you become a registered voter prior to the '63 demonstration? Prior
to the '63 demonstration, yes.
What was that experience like?
It was tough becoming the. You had to tell how many courthouses it was, and they'd ask you some of the most.
Do you remember specifically the questions they asked you when you went in to register?
This is no joke. Now they wanted to know about my mother's mother, and
what did they want to know about your mother's mother?
Just where she was born and this kind of thing, and
that you could
they
answer
wanted to
that.
know.
You could answer that, though, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I could do that.
Okay.
But they wanted to know how many courthouses there was in St. Clair County, all this kind of thing, and if they tried to make it as difficult as they possibly can,
Did you pass the first time?
I passed the first time. I sure did.
Yeah.
They ask you a question, get up and walk from the desk and stay 2 or 3 minutes, hoping that you would get up and leave, or anything to harass you to keep you from doing it, throw papers to you, all this kind of. But it was worth it. It was worth it to become a registered voter.
Did you assist other people in preparing
I sure
them
did.
to become registered voters?
I sure did. Sure did.
Was that with the NACP or with SCLC or Alabama Christian Movement or any particular organization or with your church or what?
Yeah. Well, it was with it was with the movement. It was with NAACP before they were outlawed, and then it was with the movement, and I was motivated. Had no idea whatsoever becoming the pastor of Bethel Baptist Church, following after Reverend Provert followed Reverend Shuttlesworth, and then I followed, but I had no idea. But I was motivated to become a member of that church, and of course Reverend Shuttlesworth was pastor, and he did the initially taking me in, the church, and I worked in the church, and we had a program that to encourage people to become registered voter. And so I remember walking the community from street to street, street to street. And we were very successful in helping people to become registered voter.
When did you become an ordained minister? Yeah. Were you still a young man involved in the movement, or was it prior to then?
It was. I was still in the movement. I was still in the movement.
This is in the early '60s. Then.
Early '60s. Early '60s.
And you joined Bethel.
I joined Bethel Church.
And you joined Bethel as a result of
her activity in the movement. Her activity in the movement.
Were you at Bethel in 1960 when the Freedom Riders came to Birmingham?
I sure was. I was at
Did you have any relationship with that part of the movement?
A little. We knew it was coming in, and we were making preparation to greet them coming in, and had been making contact with the police to help whatever bad time that they were that they might have. We expected them to have some bad times.
You
But
say you made contact with the police?
yes.
What does that mean? How did you?
Well, there was some contact had been made with the FBI to to give the kind of protection that they needed to come through a city like this and the other cities that they were going through.
Right.
So
you didn't make contact with the Birmingham police. It was with the FBI, with the federal
yes.
police. Okay.
And just doing some leg work and trying to see to it that everything was in place to help out in that situation.
Did you have the opportunity to meet any of these freedom riders?
I know I did, but I'm trying to think of her name. I think it was Martha something that I had an opportunity to meet her, and anyway, she was a very encouraging person, motivating person,
Right.
believed in what she was doing.
Yes, I actually said 1960, but the freedom riders in 61.
Yes.
The sit-ins began anyway in 1960.
Yes.
Were you at all involved in the sit-ins?
Yes. Yes, I was involved.
Tell me about your experiences there.
We wanted those counters down so bad because it provided. Yeah, it was
you
bad.
had actually worked at Cresses, right?
I worked at Cresses.
And so you knew the operation.
That's correct. That's correct. I knew the operation of it, and it was bad that you waited on everybody, and but when time for lunchtime or whatever for you, you went upstairs and back in a room that nobody could find but you. And just weren't catering or waiting on blacks at all. Separate bathrooms, separate water fountains. It was just awful. And but they wanted your money. They want you to spend your money with them, but they would do no accommodating whatsoever when it came to eating or using the your restroom facilities.
Were you one of the sit-in demonstrators?
I was one of the sit-in demonstrators. Sure was.
Did you sit in at Cresses?
No, I didn't. I didn't sit in at Cresses. By working there at Cresses and being around town, working around town and whatever, that provided me with the knowledge of what was going on. So I don't know why. I don't know why. Reverend Shuttleworth one day, he just talked with me. He said, "Gaston, come here." And he said, we're going to have to do something. Because these people are not going to voluntarily do anything, and we're going to have to do something. And I need to go to Atlanta and see about getting their CLC to come. What you think? I said, well, you have to do what you need to do. He said, well, they're going to have a convention over, and maybe we can move on from there. I said, well, all right, but whatever you need to do, that's what you need to do. Well, he did, and they did send a team over here, and I got a chance to meet Julian Bond, Reverend Wyatt Walker. They were the first to come. You
actually worked very closely with Wyatt Walker.
I worked very close with him.
In the development of the strategy.
That's correct.
For Birmingham.
That's what I'm talking about now, yes.
Tell me a bit about that. How was that strategy set up, and what were the day-to-day operations like? Well,
Wyatt was, had studied law a little bit, and he's a very fine, comical person to work with. He liked to have fun. He enjoyed life. And he wanted me to show him around all of the places that were had lunch counters and this kind of thing. And the strategy is to send waves in, some at a certain hour, all during the day, and not at the same place at other places, So we put Armstrong and Abraham and Calvin in jail first.
You mean
And then I took the second wave.
Calvin and Abraham Wood?
Yes.
And Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Yes.
They
were the first to actually...
They were the first.
And this was as a result of sitting
Yes.
in one of the restaurants?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course we went not the following day, but I believe the next day after that.
And you sat in that next day?
I sat in the next day.
Okay. Were you arrested?
I was arrested.
Where was this? What
We were arrested from, you remember the Lane drugstore?
Yes.
We were arrested from Lane drugstore.
Okay.
Sure did.
And what were the circumstances? How did it happen?
Can you believe I just actually felt good about going to jail, that it was all worth going to jail? They were not as nasty as we thought they were going to be. I think that I think that they were really stunned by our coming together. You know, people talk about division, that we just can't get together to do something, but here was a situation where people really got together and meant doing what they were doing, and I think it stunned them. They were not as nasty to us as we had anticipated in jail. They made things very, very convenient for us.
How do you mean very convenient?
Well, like they just open up all the cells and say, "Yo, just walk around with it like you want to." You know, I realized that they could have meant, and probably did, that thinking that some of us walk away, you know, but we stayed, and that's, I'll never forget, on Sunday morning that they allowed us to go out and get newspapers and this kind of thing, and at times they just couldn't stand for us to sing any spiritual song or Negro hit anthems, Amazing Grace, whatever. They just couldn't stand
What
it.
were their responses to your?
They pleaded and asked us to please quit singing that. It made them tear up, you know. And
Now, you were arrested. Was Wyatt arrested?
no, Wyatt weren't arrested. The reason he was not arrested is because he was the general of the thing. You know, he needed to be there to see the others do what's necessary, and also pick a leader. You needed a leader in every wave of people that was going to jail. You needed somebody to be the spokesman,
right? And
he was good at picking persons who everybody else be quiet, don't say a word, and that one person, and everybody else follow that pattern.
Now, is this actually during April and May of 1963?
April and May of 1963. That's correct.
Was that the only time that you were arrested?
That was the only time I was arrested.
And how long did you stay in jail?
I think I stayed in jail 7 days.
7 days?
7 days.
Okay. And
7 days.
were there any negative experiences in those 7 days that you experienced?
Well, a little. I know they put Brother Armstrong and Woods and all of us on a detail, cleaning up down to the stadium.
At Legion Field?
At Legion Field. They sure did.
And how did that work out? Did you actually clean the stadium?
Oh, well, you know, we did what we could, but they used that as a mean of trying to get others to turn back and not come in the demonstration. tried to make him fearful of being on any kind of game or any kind of detail whatsoever.
Work detail. So did they
Yes.
did they transport you from the jail to Legion Field several mornings?
Yes, yes.
And you worked out there all day?
Practically all day. Practically all day.
But you did work.
But we did
You didn't
work.
refuse to work.
Oh, no. Don't refuse to work.
Did you have any encounter with Bull Connor?
Not personally. But I happened to be around that Easter Sunday morning when he tried to get those firemen and policemen to arrest us and tried to get the firemen to put water on us. Reverend Charles Billups, he's dead now. He led that march. And Bull Connor was really afraid because somehow those policemen, they didn't move, and the firemen didn't move. And I saw this with my own eyes. One of the guys did turn that water on, but that water never came out of that hose. And those who was holding it dropped it and ran as if a whole regiment was after them. Okay.
Did some will say that would sort of imply that in fact was divine intervention?
Yes, correct. I saw that with my own eyes. Yes. He turned that water on, but that water did not come. Now, it ran through the hose, but when it got to the mouth of that hose, it didn't come out. It frightened them to death. He ran himself, Bull Connor ran himself and got back in the tank automobile, and he left there. And the others just stood there at attention. They just couldn't move. So it was a divine intervention there.
The movement then was really at its heyday in that particular the demonstrations in April and May of '63. You're being one of the organizers. How successful would you say what you had planned became? How successful were those efforts to change Birmingham at that particular time?
I would consider it very successful because I'm living not totally pleased, but it's 90% better than it was back then. You can go to lunch counter and eat without being harassed. You can catch public facilities and sit where you want without being harassed by just looking at a bus driver with his guns on, we can make a choice of our workplaces and get better wages for what we do. So it played a very significant part in making a change in Birmingham, and of course all of the advancement that we've had.
Yeah. You also a member of the group of men that actually set up churches and homes to protect them during these most turbulent days. Can you tell me a little about that whole process?
Yes. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think my father started the Godship. And then the president of that fell to me. And that was I had a list with persons who were willing to do God duty. And I would call either 3 or 4 to be at Brother Armstrong certain days, and also over Reverend at Bethel Church, at my own church, to be there.
And you
And
sort
we
of
provide-
coordinated that effort.
That's correct. That's correct. To see that someone was there at all times, and if I didn't get anyone to come, then I would have to take that. That's just like a captain on a ship. You know, if you don't have anybody to hold the helm, he have to do it himself.
Yes.
So
Were women involved in that effort?
some women were involved. So Nellie Flemons, for one, she was involved, and some other ladies out in Ensley. I believe Mamie. I can't think of her last name now. Hey, Failed. I believe she was involved, but I know Sister Nellie Flemmer was involved.
But there were a number of women that also
Yes.
served in that same capacity.
That's correct. That's correct.
Well, were any of those people who were guards armed?
Yes, we were. Yes, we were. With permits. Now, we just didn't take up arms. We tried to do it according to the law, and we had permits to guard and help preserve the leadership of the organization, and try to provide them with much comfort as we possibly could.
Were there ever any necessity to utilize any of the arms?
No, we didn't have to, but after we would hear about certain things, then we would prepare for it, you know,
How do you
and
mean
do
pre-
what
how
we
you
had
mean
to do.
prepare? What would you do to prepare?
Well, naturally, if someone was going to come around with a bomb or carry out their threats, we would try to prevent that, and if it meant wounding someone, then we would do what we have to do.
Was that ever a case that came about?
No, we didn't have to wound anyone, but we did make preparation that on several occasions, you know, they would say, well, we'll be over there tonight and we'll just have a confrontation of what. So we prepared for that.
Did anyone ever fire a gun?
Not to my
guard?
knowledge. Not to my knowledge.
But they were there for support.
For support. That's correct.
I know there were times when whites would come to the community, drive into the community.
Yes.
Did you ever witness any of that as you stood guard? And if so, what was the reaction?
My reaction was just to watch them and to try to prevent any bad ordeal if that's what it was going to be, and not just lose our head because he was in the community and go over and harass him or shoot him, you know, or anything like that would turn the whole situation around. We didn't want to do that. We would just watch the individual.
Because you would let him know that you were watching.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The whole movement, of course, was one attempting to direct change as well as to protect the community.
Yes, correct.
What kinds of efforts did you find necessary to give the community the strength to continue in the efforts to make that change? Let me just give you an example. When you were since you were a part and really the sort of the head of this organization, did you do the same kind of thing at the churches where the meetings were being held? And were there ever any encounters, at those churches? I know that there were encounters at churches that, late at night, people would ride through, they would do certain things. But did you ever have the same kind of situation at churches where the meetings were in motion?
Yes. Well, they would always send a policeman to sit in to see what was said and this kind of thing. But you also had some people, what we would call night riders, would just come in anyway, and they'll just be out around the church. They might try to get something started, but we would just remain calm. Unless we were forced to do something, then we would do it. But we just continue to keep our vigil and to see that everything would go well and not go under what we are experiencing now, burning of churches or bombing of churches and what have you. That's what we were trying to prevent.
You said if you were forced to do something, then you would. Were you ever forced to?
We were never forced to do anything.
But you were prepared.
If we were prepared.
Presented itself.
That's correct.
The demonstrations continued throughout that year of 1963.
Yes.
In 63, August 63, of course, the March on Washington took place.
Yes.
And of course, the monumental speech made by Dr. King sort of put the movement in a different perspective now, elevated it somewhat. By the same token, the next month, September 15th, the 16th Street Church was bombed.
Yes.
What do you remember about that day?
I think I had did guard duty, not at 16th Street, but at our own church over there. I think I had did guard duty that night. And that morning, had gone home to prepare to come to church. And heard the blast. And then it was reported on radio that this church had been bombed. And I went down to see the extent of the damage and the little girls that were killed. That was a very hurting experience. Of that. And that's what we were trying to prevent and not be careless. Many of us felt that, if we wished that we had some means to prevent that from happening, somebody around, but we surely didn't think that anybody would do anything in the broad
Was anyone
day.
guarding 16th Street that
I don't
night,
believe so.
before?
I don't believe so that night. I'm not sure, but I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
That was sort of a low point then.
Yes,
Because it sort of set the movement back to an extent.
that's correct. It sure did. Yes.
Did it create fear in the minds of black folk in Birmingham?
Maybe a little bit. Not that much.
But it didn't stop the
It didn't stop the movement. Didn't stop the movement.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to just talk about in relationship to the movement of Birmingham, in relationship to what we have been discussing today? Anything that you would like to leave with people that would view this tape?
Well, let me add this to the 16th Street.
Okay.
It was no more than just a few days that black people knew who bombed that church. And of course, the authority didn't seem to do anything about it. Well, it didn't do anything about it until a few years later. But they knew where that man lived. And when they arrested him, he was living in that same, he was living on 21st Avenue, and which is now Shuttleworth Drive coming out of town. They lived there at that corner house on 21st Avenue there. And he was the one who bombed that church. Of course, he didn't do it by himself. You know, others have been arrested.
Right.
But they knew that. And the temperament of the community was when they were going to make the arrest on that man for doing such horrible things. And
it would take nearly 20 years.
Yes.
Probably
yes.
over 20 years.
20 years for them to do it. For them to do it. I'm hoping that we don't lose what we've already gained. Our young people seem to me is turn around. I still have hope in them. I still have race pride. That was the first I ever heard of race pride was Dr. King was speaking one day that we need to have more race pride, more concern for one another. Love your race, you know, don't let anybody talk you down about your race. I'm hoping that we will remain strong and a strong people and continue to make advancement because we need to. We have not achieved. We have not totally won the war. We've gotten some segments of it, but there's a lot more to be gained, and I'm hoping that we will. I'm hoping that we will do that. This will continue to be our prayer. Now, I still do this at our church, Central. I still encourage people to become qualified voters. Okay, that was one of the main things when we came out of high school. Those teachers taught us to please go down and register to vote. You're now 18 years old, and you can do it. Okay, so we want to. I still encourage them to do that. You know, we're going to have an election tomorrow. And I try not to ever miss that because there was a lot of sweat, a lot of running over us with horses down there in Selma to gain what we have.
Right.
You know, we paid poll tax when nobody else paid any tax at all, just to be registered voters.
Right.
So I'm hoping that that we don't go back or lose an inch from what we already have.
Thank you, Reverend Gaston.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for the invite and the chance to do it. Okay.
Well,